to the basement. So life is good around the shop here this morning. We're down in the basement. We're about to get something fun accomplished. I'm wearing my favorite shirt that my wife just wishes I would throw away. And I've got a fun project I'm going to be doing this morning, and I thought you might want to tag along. If you've looked around my channel much, you've seen that Christmas is one of my favorite times of the year. I like to make Christmas decorations, some of them outlandish, some of them simple. And I think the reason is that Christmas brings back memories. If you're like me, you have good memories of time snuggled around the Christmas tree on Christmas morning with those you care about. And this year, I lost my mother, the woman who was there in those memories around the Christmas tree for me. And it brings a certain poignancy to the Christmas season this year. So maybe I say that this little project is dedicated to Sandy. Now, the other day, Mrs. Claus and I were over at Target, and we came across these decorative little trays. I'm not sure what you're really supposed to do with it, but it's kind of rusticy, made to look as though they were made in somebody's shop, maybe in the 40s or the 50s. And that is actually one of my favorite styles. So I offered to turn these into a drawer, each one into a drawer, and then build them into a cabinet. And Mrs. Claus thought that that would be a good idea. Now, I stumbled across a method for making drawers and cabinets a year or so ago that I really like to use. And basically all you do is you build a tray. You just build a rectangular frame. The bottom of the frame is masonite, and then you just have the masonite stick out the side. I think this is about 3/8 of an inch stick out the side. And then in the cabinet that you put it in, all you have to do is cut slots where you want this tray to engage. The cabinet is a simple rectangle, and then this drawer will slide right into the slot. And I really like building drawers and cabinets that way. It's fast, it's easy to do, it's inexpensive, and it's surprisingly effective. This masonite slides in a groove surprisingly well. The drawers are very smooth, very fluid. So what we'll do is use the very same technique. We'll just give each tray a little masonite bottom with the ears sticking out the side, and then we'll build it a little cabinet to slide in. We'll give the cabinet little feet. The top of the cabinet will come out a little bit wider so that it's more of a furniture look. But overall, we're not going for fine woodworking or whatever. We're just going for something that's consistent with these trays, something that looks as though it could have been built in somebody's basement or garage 50 or 75 years ago. To that end, I have the perfect material to make it out of. I don't really recall where I got these boards. Some kind of cabinet that got torn apart, but I have these 1x12 pine boards, and they have a little bit of wear, a little bit of life experience to them, and that makes them ideal for this project. So first thing I did is sat down and kind of drew out what I want the cabinet to look like. I find it's really helpful to use a CAD program to really envision what the project is going to look like when it's done. So we'll be starting with the top. We will cut the top to dimension and cut the dados in where it is going to lock down in the sides of the cabinet. Then we'll cut the two cabinet sides. Then we will assemble that cabinet all together. And finally add some masonite bottoms to these drawers, and they will slide right in. So stick around. Hope you enjoy the journey. So to establish this dado, I had measured on the drawing from the outside to here, which I can just use, the measurement from the end to this edge, and that gives me an accurate placement of that line. Then from there I need to back it up 3/4 of an inch minus 1/8, which is the kerf of the saw blade. 15/16 minus 12/16 is 3/16 plus 1/8 to bring back this way is 5/16. Now, my blade kerf is actually not quite 1/8, so this is going to be a little bit tight, and it is. It's about a 32nd of an inch tight. But I will play with that and adjust it and get it just right to where it's a nice snug fit. We'll do this one the same way. We'll clean that out with a 1/2 inch wood chisel to get that smooth and flat. Alright, so here we have our 2 side panels. So now all we need to do is fit the side panels into here. This is a little snuggish, so I'm going to be, first I'm going to choose the outer surface. So that will be the top and right, and this will be the top and left. And I will go ahead and get those marked, because having made that decision, from now on those need to not be put out of place. Now there's a little bit of curvature to these boards, and because this gap here is so delicate, if I try to force it in, it's going to snap that tab off. So what I'm doing is, this board, I'm shaving the middle curvature on the inside and shaving the wing curvature on the outside to make the thing straighten out. And we're shaving it, of course, with a block plane. A whole lot of people, myself included, you know, this time a couple years ago, I would have reached for a sander first. But I've come to realize that in the old days, because they did not have the access to the power tools that we do, they really had no choice but to develop some tools that could be done by hand that would do things quickly and effectively. And a block plane is a very inexpensive tool, and it will do the most amazing job of fast stock removal. Alright, that's pretty close. I'm going to work this down a little bit more here, and then that will be pretty much ready to drop in the slot on this side, and then we'll work the other one. Just a little more right in here. Alright, that one is ready. Alright, so I now have these fitting nicely. We'll drop it into the slot without fighting. That'll be held with both glue and screws. And put our mark back here. The other thing I have done is sanded these edges a little bit, because once it's glued together, it's going to be hard to sand this. Now we need to get both of these side pieces done, which means we need to cut all these side slots, cut out the feet. I'm going to be beveling the bottom of the feet back, so it's not just a big crude rectangular foot, but it's a tapered foot, tapered to the front. And then there will be a notch here somewhere these lower cleats join into. So we'll just be making both of these up according to the drawing. So having gone through with the tape measure and laid out little marks that represent each of these slots, because the kerf of this blade is a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch, what I'll be doing is going through exactly at the bottom edge of the mark, and then shift the piece a 1/16 of an inch and run it through again to widen the gap up a little bit. The width of the gap is not critical, except that it needs to be wide enough for that 1/8 inch masonite to slide in freely. And I have just eyeballed this depth of cut of this blade to about 5/16 of an inch deep. So there are the slots. Alright, now with the slots all cut, ready to receive the trays, I grab this piece of masonite, confirm that it slides clean in all of these slots. Next thing is at the bottom, at the front and at the back, the base of the cabinet is going to be held in place by these cleats, by these cross members. Solid at the top, it'll have a solid backing, but then just these vertical kind of cross members to tie the bottom together. I need to go ahead and cut the member first and then cut the rabbet exactly to fit it so that I get a clean fit. It needs to happen flush with this groove, so that's kind of self-marking. But on the other end, I've just marked it with pencil. Yeah, that's going to be nice. I need to open it up a 64th. Alright, so with all 4 of those notches cut out, we're very nearly done with the sides. All we need to do now is cut out these V-grooves that will produce the feet. So the first thing I'll do is set up the fence, tilt the blade over a little bit, and we're going to bevel this off right here to this inside so that the feet viewed from the front, you know, are coming to a taper. Then I'll grab a square, an angle finder, and lay out an angle 5 degrees. I think I will probably cut these on the bandsaw. So I have the blade set up to full height. I have switched the fence over to this side. Normally the fence, you know, rides over there. Put the fence over to this side, set that to about 1/2 inch. All we'll do is hug the board tight to the fence and run it through. Just takes a few seconds to add what I think is a meaningful improvement. Nice little touch. Alright, so with the legs cut out, the slots all cut, it's now ready to be assembled. Now, in keeping with a vintagey kind of home-built look, I'm going to be using these vintage brass screws, flathead screws, kind of fastener that, you know, that whoever in their shop in the 50s would have put this thing together with. 1 fastener at each of these spots and 2 in the top of the deck. Now, you and I both know that it's the glue that's really going to be holding the thing together, but the screws will give it a nice touch. Before I put this thing together, though, I need to set the table saw fence back up and rabbet out all around the cavity at the back to have a place where I can inset a piece of masonite that will be the back of the cabinet. There again, that's what will really provide the strength to the thing. So now with the cabinet basically built, all the heavy lifting done, I'll go ahead and drill and countersink for screws here and here, and then for the top there and there. And then I will glue it all up and screw it together, and then I'll staple a backing on. That's what will lock it into being square and stop it from skewing left to right. I have it glued, I have it screwed. Then apparently this piece of wood is just a little bit warped. So laying flat on the table saw, that corner was up in the air, a 1/4 inch. Not ridiculously, but as long as the glue is wet, as long as it's in a somewhat malleable form, I went ahead and propped up this corner and that opposite corner, and then weighed down here and weighed down there to spring it, you know, downward to the shape that I wanted to have. And in fact, I made a judgment call and I sprang it 1/8 inch beyond where I actually want it to come to rest. If I can get it to, you know, dry up in this configuration, then it will spring back just a little bit. And if I guess right, it will spring back to perfection. So, with the glue dry, we now have a little cabinet. What remains to be done is not at all complicated. So this fits here, but of course it's not riding because it needs the masonite to ride on. I will cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of masonite, just wide enough to slide in that track, and just deep enough to cover this drawer. And then each of these drawers will slide in. But then you'll see the final little difficulty, which is that I want to use this to hold Christmas ornaments. So I have set up these drawers to be taller than the tray. So we're going to fill each of these tray fronts with a piece of this vintage pine that's made to look like the cabinet itself has a header across each of the drawers. The header will actually come open with the drawer, but hopefully the overall impression is that there are headers going all the way up. So we need to cut the masonite to fit this slot, and then we need to cut 5 headers to deepen the face of this drawer. Now to get this board cleaned up and presentable, I'm just going to pull out my jointer here and run this board through the joiner. Very handy tool to have, produces a nice clean face. So I've just finished. I set the blade height to 1/4 inch and ran it through with an 1.5 inch gap to create this slice right here. Then I carefully set the blade height and depth to run it through. So now we have a rabbet that will slip down in here and will be this filler piece. So what I'll do now is get these slots cut out, and then those pieces will drop right down in there and can be glued in place. So there we have it. There's the piece. It's going to slip down in and glue right there. And I will run through and cut a shadow line right there, so this looks like 2 different pieces. So here is the basic idea. These pieces look like a header that's built into the cabinet, but they actually go with the drawer so that the contents of the drawer can be taller. For the finish, we're going to be asking Mrs. Claus what color she would like it to be. Alright, I've just returned from consultation with Mrs. Claus, and the answer turns out to be red. So I've given everything a final sanding. I have wiped everything down, try to get the dust off of it. We'll shoot all this red, let it set up, and go from there. Good morning and welcome back. So, when we left off, I was painting the case of this red, and then took the time, went through with some sandpaper, and cleaned the case off, cleaning most of the red paint off, leaving a very distressed, kind of antique looking red finish. However, we've made a couple changes in direction. One is, we've gone back to Target, we bought 2 more of the red trays, and we're going to ditch the green trays altogether. So now it's just red and white and black and wood. The final thing is, it needs some bling. So what she has asked me to do is to stripe this top surface. Broad black and white stripes, beginning with black here and then stripes across. And that should give it some real pop here on the top. So we'll paint the top white, and then we'll come back, mask out some stripes, paint those stripes black, and then we will finish it all up. Alright, so it's been sitting for a couple days, long enough for the tape not to take the white paint off. I have masked out these lines. The parts in blue are the parts that will remain white, and the parts that are white are about to turn black. Alright, so I now have the inserts glued in. I have the drawer glued to the masonite. It's time to drill for the knobs. If I had a whole lot of these to do, and if they were in any way tricky, I would just make a template out of Luan plywood. But they're real straightforward. It's centered here to here and from there to there. So I've just measured and put a pencil mark at each location. And then the very final step here. It does look vintage, which is a good thing, but it also looks kind of dry and lifeless. So in order to get this finish to have a little more of a pleasant luster, we're going to hit it with this brie wax. This Brie Wax product will give it a pleasant luster without it being a big wet look. So there we have it. One completed Christmas ornament cabinet. 5 drawers. Each drawer holds 6 ornaments. Fairly easy to do. Fairly inexpensive. About $40 invested in it, including paint and knobs. Kind of a fun project. And voila. You have a nice decorative object during Christmas time. And you have storage for 24 delicate ornaments over the off season. And hey, thanks for watching.